to keep yourself away. Sound and color. This life ain't like it was. Sound and...
Alright, we're back. We're in the new set location, which I think looks pretty dang nice, especially the posters we got over here that none of you can see. But I think this place is looking good, and I thought I'd come back to recommend some stuff. This video is not the best of the year video. It's not like a worst of the year. These are just the movies that I saw last year, which I thought was a great year of cinema. But we'll talk about that more when I do the official best of the year whenever that comes out, most likely November. But I just wanted to talk about some good, like, noteworthy films that I saw that I really enjoyed or found something out of that I wanted to present towards the couple of you that are watching right now. So yeah, let's begin. To start off our magnificent list, we're going to talk about my favorite guilty pleasure of the year, and that is Old by M. Night Shyamalan. Alright, to be honest, this film is not very perfect or good in many different departments. Primarily in like the script, acting, and even plotting department. But this film is just so entertaining and utilizes its concept in a way that it does not waste any minutes. I was hooked from beginning all the way over to end. And plus there's some stuff with the married couple throughout the film that I thought was pretty adequate for the most part and was better than everything else in terms of a story and character. That it made the thing round out to be a little bit more than something bad. But I enjoyed it thoroughly and I highly recommend that one. Even though I was not the biggest fan of this, I really did appreciate and admire a lot of what Drive My Car by Ryusuke Hamaguchi did. A mostly effective look on continuing to find meaning in life when many different things seem to go against you. With a pretty terrific lead performance and many terrific monologues that really did help it stand out. It did not hit me as harder as it did other people, but I do feel as though there is a lot to it and a lot of others have admired and related to this film much greater than I have, or probably will. But I did think that there was a lot more to this, so I highly recommend checking this out whenever you got the chance. For another good recommendation, I would have to say it's Rose Glass's Saint Maud, and it's one that has grown on me over time. I didn't think it was all that terrific, but with the more thoughts of like kind of like letting it sit with me, and especially like rewatching things, this is a pretty terrific like debut. A subtly tense look into finding meaning and drive going into a religion when you may not be doing it for the right reasoning. And with terrific like atmosphere and a proper utilization of jump scares that I still frequently think about it every now and then. The lead performance is strong and the film does not overstay its welcome because of its short runtime. And I think it works out pretty well by the end of it, especially with its ending and particularly like the last shot, which I found it to be comical, but it did seem very intentional with like what it was doing and how it was utilized that. This film, I think I'm going to love this film when I watch it again, or if I watch it again. So yeah, I highly recommend Rose Glass's Saint Maud. And a solid adventure that just felt more of the same, I would have to say, is A Quiet Place Part 2 by John Krasinski. The reason why I say that of this potentially 3-part trilogy is that this film has the same strengths and weaknesses as the first one, where it's a pretty well-made movie, good atmosphere, tense jump scares, and a solid lead performance, and a fine little emotional story towards it, but the characters are just kind of become dumb during certain moments that are just there only so scary moments can happen, and just kind of like unintentionally funny things will happen throughout. And there's a bunch of other things, but I'm not going to get into it because I am recommending it. It is a good film. Like, I did enjoy myself, and especially seeing it in theaters. It was like one of the very kind of first films I saw back when theaters reopened, and I did enjoy it, and I would recommend it, especially because it's just a fun little, it's not that long either. I just thought that it just felt more of the same as the first. I'm also going to have to recommend Vivo by Kirk D'Amico and Brandon Jeffords. It was pretty cute with pretty terrific songs utilized that really did keep like the emotion and adventure in a good going way that I didn't lose tension or engagement throughout the whole film. And you could tell that there was a lot of creativity and genuine heart and soul made within this film that does continue to show that Sony Animation is really trying their best and showing that they're an animation studio worth watching right now, giving everything they can to really get you in there, and I love that. Tied for being the biggest, or if not one of the biggest surprises of the year was, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Cruella by Craig Gillespie. Let me get this out. I'm on record of saying and doing this, but I hate just about all of the live action Disney films. The Lion King remake is one of my least favorite films of all time, probably in the top like 10, 6. So I had no interest in this film, didn't want to really care or watch it, but I was shocked that when I saw this in theaters last year, that this film really did try, and I had a blast watching it. I was surprised just by how like visually engaging, entertaining, well made, and fun as compared to the other recent live action Disney remakes. Especially in the sense of just trying to do something different and kind of not really unique, but at least like a different approach to doing it, as opposed to just making a carbon like beat for beat remake with maybe one little story beat or new character added to explain some plot hole or dumb thing from the original. They really did try, and plus with the film being like a heist film with different little heists being set in place and executed, that helped drive the plot forward, and having a pretty terrific villain, especially it's probably like the best Disney villain since I don't know how long. They really did help elevate this film to just be like probably my favorite of the live action Disney remakes so far. I will admit the opening until like Emma Stone shows up is a bit rough. Every moment of mentioning like the 100 and Dalmatian inclusion of like what's the devil? No, it's Deville, and it's like what? And then just a bunch of different other things like that. Like, and that stuff's definitely the worst part of the movie. It does bring down a lot of just different things, but it didn't make me like cringe or make the movie feel like a 2 out of 10. And another thing is that the soundtrack, while I do like it and I kind of frequently listen to it, it does feel like overkill, and it feels almost reminiscent of like Suicide Squad, just serving no real like purpose or point, and it's just there just like, hey, you know this song from this time period. And it does feel like overkill most of the time. But those are really my only complaints, because I really did enjoy and like this film. I was surprised how much I liked it. This really did have like a different sense of energy, drive, and direction towards it, where you're like, the people who made it were like, okay, let's just try to do something different with it. It's not wholly original, it's not wholly fantastic, but I really did like and enjoy and admire what this did, especially in comparison with other Disney products. It was just an enjoyable, fun time that I enjoyed quite well. Then we got Lamb by Vladimir Johannesson. And I thought it was just a pretty good, enjoyable, laid-back, kick-it film about this family with this uncle who comes to invade the family, tries to better himself, but only worsens himself during their stay. And it just so happens that in this family, the child is like a human lamb hybrid. And that's really the only like weird thing about it. The film's like pretty tame, it doesn't really do a whole lot, and there's no like integrated messages. I don't know, when I saw it in theaters I just enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty cool, laid back. It was a really well made film, and Nomi Rapace does a really good job performing the lead, and like the VFX on the lamb child were pretty good. They look really convincing. It is pretty tame, and the ending's kind of pretty lame and just like okay. But I did enjoy it, and you know, if you're just looking for some sort of like fine hour-and-a-half distraction kick-it film, I would recommend Lamb. Then we're gonna dunge into the depths of Nightmare Alley by Guillermo del Toro. And I thought this film was very intriguing, and it really did keep building up this lead character played by Bradley Cooper in a sense that shows if this film is his rise or fall. And I thought it was very entertaining and kept this engagement throughout the whole film. Held together by Bradley Cooper's performance, a wonderful score, and terrific set and production design that made the film feel very like realistic and accurate within its time period. And they did help elevate this to become like, I think, one of the most intriguing, most well-made films of the year, and it does feature like one of my favorite endings of the year. It's just very haunting, and the way the film builds it up is just magnificent. That it's legitimately haunting, especially with the theater. It got large, and the sound on it, it legitimately like kind of like kept me like just frightened long after I left the theater. It was a terrific ending that I'm like, I get it, this makes sense, and I thought it was just phenomenal. It is a little long, a little bloated, but it's worth checking out, and with a lot more of the great attributes and good things added to it, it makes it a worthwhile watch, I think. A welcome return to the buddy comedy road trip was most definitely Bad Trip by Kitao Sakurai. I had talked about this one previously in an episode of Intermission back in, I believe, March, and everything I said in that still holds up. It was a very fun time with many different funny moments and it just shows that, you know, Eric Andre is just pretty terrific at like the hidden camera comedy stuff. That I really do recommend it, and I hope that he makes more stuff like this with his creative team. Now Come On, Come On. We're going to talk about Come On, Come On by Mike Millis. And I thought it was a cute and slightly poignant look into this relationship between an uncle and his nephew, played spectacularly by Joaquin Phoenix and Woody Norman. The way that Joaquin Phoenix hangs out and tries to see the things of life and like through the childlike wonderment through Woody Norman's character, I thought was really good. They had really great chemistry and it kept the film very engaging throughout. It was pretty cute and I would highly recommend it. A really cool and underrated one that came out last year that I haven't seen too much talk about was Oxygen by Alexandra Aja. It was a tense and effective film focusing on where our lead is trapped and the ways she has to find out and discover where she is and how she can escape. I thought it looked great, I thought the sound was pretty great, and it even utilizes really interesting and pretty like terrific photography, even though the film is within this like singular pod that our lead is trapped in. The film even features a really effective and genuinely like shocking plot twist towards, I believe, like near the end of like the second act or within the middle, that was legitimately effective, shocking, and it recontextualized everything beforehand in a meaningful way that left me like jaw dropped and like, oh my god, like how is this going to be solved? I really want to know what's going to happen next. So yeah, if you haven't canceled Netflix already, I highly recommend checking this one out because it was really good and I do think a lot of people will get something out of it. Another really effective one that like went under the radar last year was most definitely The Night House by David Bruckner. I thought the filmmaking and lead performance by Rebecca Hall were pretty terrific. That and matching with the tone and really effective filmmaking and atmosphere, especially with its uses of jump scares, really did make this film very engaging and meaningful throughout. And I really did like the production design, all these like little silhouettes of like figures of like the husband heading throughout the house. I thought that was really cool. Ending a little sloppy, but I thought it was pretty effective and it did leave me genuinely satisfied by the end of it, so I really can't complain. I do highly recommend checking this one out whenever you can. And up next, we're going to do the obligatory talk about the unnecessary worldwide sensation that is Encanto. That was made by Byron Howard, Jared Bush, and Charisse Castro-Smith. And I gotta be honest, I did like this film. I thought this film looked very fantastic, with its songs being very effective and catchy in helping to illustrate and paint a picture within the film's messages on generational trauma and a bunch of other different things that did make the film feel very fresh, pretty easygoing, and really enjoyable. And I really did like the animation, if I haven't said that already. I think really my only issue is just that like some of the score that's not like the songs of the film. It's very like forgettable and not very well utilized. I did not think this film was funny. There's not a single funny joke or funny visual I remember from the film. And I would say the ending does feel very quick, like they speed run like 20 minutes worth of stuff within what feels like 8 minutes. And that didn't completely leave me satisfied by the end. And that's okay. I still liked the film, much of the film, in a really high regard that I really do recommend. I see why people gravitate towards it. It's not my favorite animated film of the year, but it's a pretty good one and a slightly more exceptional one that this Disney animation studio has made within the past few years, I would say. So yeah, I would recommend it, or you've probably already watched it, so it doesn't matter. Then a slightly controversial one that'll ruffle a few feathers is most definitely going to be Last Night in Soho by Edgar Wright. Love Edgar Wright, was highly looking forward to this film, and this was definitely like a weaker entry within his filmography. Its attempts at jump scares and its ending are like pretty crazy and are not really well implemented, but it didn't like ruin the film for me necessarily, especially since the jump scares are like, I think there's like 3, but whenever they appear it's just very like and the ending was very over the top. But it didn't feel very like in a way where the film follows like everything, I guess, that ending. It just felt more so like really loud left field. But I still enjoyed it. I really did feel like this film was very entertaining, really well made, which is every Edgar Wright film. And it really did have like a pretty solid like message and a foundation behind it of why romanticizing the past is just bad and not really a good thing to do. And especially with like the dark, like twisted stuff and elements within the past that a lot of us aren't really accustomed to. And that was pretty good. I feel like it could have been explored more, but what they do, it was pretty good, and it has a pretty solid like element of secondhand fear that it did leave me very like engaged throughout, and it does have a couple of moments where I was genuinely like tense. It's very good. It's a very good film that I liked it quite a bit. It's a good film worth checking out. Don't let the Twitter mob convince you that this film is bad, or because it's not. Then a slightly controversial one that'll ruffle a few feathers is most definitely The Matrix Resurrections by Lana Wachowski. Of course, like most people, I love the first one, and I guess I'm in a minority or in a majority of people who don't like the sequels. They're just pretty boring, and the action goes on way too long, and they just try over-explaining different things that don't feel very engaging. So I was really pleased when, with this film, they did like different ideas and things with the world of the Matrix that I thought was more engaging and found it to engage me more than the sequels had. The way it reincorporates the characters into this world was pretty interesting, and it worked to tell like a pretty solid love story between Neo and Trinity so that they would be able to live on. And I thought that was pretty like sweet in a way. The action is pretty adequate for the most part, and the plot does get progressively like more interesting as it keeps going on, because towards the beginning the meta elements is kind of like meh, but it's there to kind of set up a foundation of like, hey, we didn't really want to make this, so we're going to use this to have these characters live on for the rest of their lives. It was a personal film for Lana Wachowski, as this film was like a grieving process for her after she was losing her parents. So she resurrected the characters so that they could live on and do whatever they want. And I thought that was pretty sweet. And the film did have a lot of other things going for it that worked pretty well. It was an interesting piece that we're definitely probably not ever going to see again. And I do respect it for those reasonings and it really did like have some it took guts to make this, and especially making a unique, different blockbuster, that something that we haven't really seen before, which I liked it, and I liked it a lot, and I do hope to watch it again someday because it was interesting. Up next is some indie film. Psych. That's right, you're getting more studio IP with a brand new Marvel movie. But it's a good thing that this is a good Marvel movie this time, because we're talking about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings by Destin Daniel Cretton. The more I think about it, I think this is like the best character introduction for like an MCU lead since like the first Iron Man. And I think that's really due to the story and the action, because even though the action's pretty minimal, it's sporadically used in a very effective way, and it boosts a lot of like great energy, framing, blocking, and a lot of like other adjectives, but it's true, because they're very creative and terrific. There's no real shaky cam, you can see what's going on, and they are pretty terrifically choreographed. And I thought the performances by Simu Liu and Tony Leung were really fantastic, and especially of the latter, of Tony Leung. He like carries this film. He's most definitely one of the best like MCU villains to date. I really did think the score was really good. I thought like the overall pace and like way the film went on was really good, and it did keep me like interested and wondering, I really hope how this is gonna go, and it had me caring for both our protagonist and antagonist. It was really good. I would say the CGI isn't all that great. Towards the end it becomes like, the Marvel movie of like they gotta fight each other and you can already predict what's gonna happen, but it has a lot going for it that made the film feel more meaningful and engaging as it went on, that I really didn't mind it. And I want to see more to do with Shang-Chi. I thought it was terrific. One of the most enjoyable and deeply sweet movies that came out last year, I'm going to have to give, was Licorice Pizza by Paul Thomas Anderson. This film looks great in its lovingly recreated depiction of the 1970s, and features like star-making roles by Alana Hayam and Cooper Hoffman. They have like really great chemistry and like a genuinely believable back and forth and relationship between it that really doesn't feel like gross or like any hidden stuff between it until the last scene. But regardless of that, like the film keeps this like really great momentum and balance and chemistry between the actors that it never feels like hypocritical or is promoting anything else. It's really about the contrast of like one person being too mature and the other one not being mature enough and not really having found their footing in life yet, and how these like contrasts connect people, and it explores like why people like this really connect, explore, and the way other people really can't with similar people. And I thought it was just really fantastic. It was enjoyable, laid back, sweet, and what Mike from Red Letter Media would call a good old-fashioned movie. And that's what we need more of. And Paul Thomas Anderson, especially with this, is showing he's becoming a true like master at. Then of course we gotta give the obligatory mention to The Power of the Dog by Jane Campion. It was a really slow, tense look into the mental views of the Old West, on like the ideas and real mythology of what it means to be a cowboy and a man within that time period. Packed with terrific performances, photography, music, set and production design, that it did leave me like legitimately engaged throughout the whole story. And it did have like a really powerful, legitimately effective ending that did like recontextualize pretty much like the last like 40 minutes prior to it. And it wasn't done in like a real like confusing weird way. It was done in a way that was very meaningful and actually like furthers the views of the film, especially like long after the credits. You're just thinking back like, wow, because that connects to that, and it's like, wow, it's pretty fantastic. And Jane Campion did a terrific job really connecting these ideas together. It's a really solid one, and definitely worth a watch if you haven't canceled your Netflix subscription yet, even though you're probably about to push the button right now. A visually striking, powerful look into refugees and immigrants fleeing from their land was definitely Flee by Jonas Pohar Rasmussen. I'm sorry if I butchered the name. The film felt like legitimately real within the execution themes, and especially the different animation shifts that it does of going from like utilizing real life footage to more animated footage to try to kind of help like make the film feel more colorful and different than and trying to lighten up things that are far more darker. And I did think the animation was really well utilized throughout the film, really well presented, and the story was just insanely like just powerful and just really did like keep you on edge of like what was going to happen next. And even though you do kind of know the outcome, it still leaves you on like a really intense ride of like how, and especially with how when you read up about it, how common what happened in the film is, it just makes it feel all the more heartbreaking. Visual style, I can understand not being everyone's thing, but it really did help make the film feel more different and engaging within the subject matter in ways that really was just hard at points. Now, onto something else much better. We're going to talk about one of the most awesome films I watched last year that I'm pretty sure tons of people have seen, because the conversations I've seen in this film is just pretty large and fantastic, and that is Malignant by James Wan, the critical legendary darling behind Fast and the Furious 7 and Aquaman. Maybe some other horror stuff, but that doesn't matter. These three are like awesome. This film is like ridiculous. Pretty stupid, if I'm going to be honest. It is ridiculous. It was a mess. It was absurd. Kind of terrible in some slight little tiny bit way, but I thought it was a magnificent experience, and I loved every minute of it, and it was everything I wanted and more. The production design and photography are pretty fantastic and are really creative and really well integrated within this world, and especially with how it's utilized within like the first like 3 minutes. It already kind of gives off that tone that, hey, this is like cheesy schlock that like kind of is self-aware that it's dumb, that I was like, oh my god. I saw this in like the biggest screen at the theater I saw it at, and I was just on board. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. I can't wait. It gave like a really crazy campy tone that's just like most movies are just lacking nowadays. So this just felt like a wonderful exception that I was grateful to be watching it. Like, oh my god, like this is what we need more of. The production design, like the dialogue, the twists, score, sound, and acting are all just so gloriously like over the top and campy that it's a miracle that this exists. I do love just a lot about this film, and maybe one day I will talk about it. Who knows, maybe this will go in like the best of the films list. I have no idea, but like this was just, but we need more films like it. And while it's not up higher, this is like one I highly recommend. If you don't watch anything from this list, at least watch this one, because this is an awesome, genuinely wonderful little movie. I didn't even reveal the twists because I didn't know what they were, but then when I kind of was putting it together, I'm like, wait, that can't be the twist, and it was wonderfully like executed and presented in a way that I love this film. I no shade thrown. I love this film. It's terrific. We need more like it. Make more like this, James Wan. You're the king at it. I really like this film, and I highly recommend it. Just like all the other films, because that's the last of the list. I really liked all these films. They all had something to them and are worth checking out and seeking. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. Check them out whenever you can. I probably will make part 2 if I see a few more extra goodies that will come out, because I'm assuming the top 20 are probably gonna like 6 of them are gonna like dive down, potentially because I'll see other magnificent films. But regardless of what happens, keep the lookout on the Letterboxd, because I always update stuff on there of what I watch, and I really do hope that you're enjoying this, because I am. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'm just gonna have to see you later. Peace.